Well, we take a look at Phil's Knicks numbers, and nothing to tell you right here that you would have a Hall of Fame coach in the making, but so much learned there, as you heard from his thoughts from Red Holtzman. And as we come back out here, also after being traded to the Nets in 1978, Jackson got his first chance to coach when Kevin Lockery made him an assistant. But Charlie, just maybe a few years earlier in his autobiography, Maverick, Jackson wrote that he could never imagine himself coaching in the NBA. So what led to the change of heart?
I think he got more comfortable in the pro game. He was the guy, when a new player came to the Knicks, he was roomed with Phil. In those days, players didn't room by themselves, with the idea that Phil was going to teach him the offense, teach him the defense. So he was kind of the encyclopedia. Red trusted him to do that. And before he hurt his back, he had like a 36, 37 vertical jump. And after he hurt his back, that was diminished a great deal. And he had to rely on his knowledge of the game. He couldn't just out-jump guys or stuff like that. He also had 40-inch arms with those high shoulders. Right. So effectively, they were like 42, 43 inches. And his arms were like snakes. You know, he could get in and get out. So by the fact that his talents, some of his talents were diminished after the surgery, he had to rely on his knowledge, and he had to rely on precision. And then that's when he kind of learned the heart of the game and what you need to do to win. And I think that started him thinking about being a coach.
He gets, they poke a little fun at him because of the Zen, but purely the hoop philosophy comes from Red Holtzman. In a minute or so, tell us what Red really meant to Phil.
Well, one of Red's things was hit the open man. That was his famous saying. And all that implies, that also means trust the open man. And in huddles, there were a lot of times where Red used to say to his players, okay, what's going on out there? So he gave them a voice in the huddle. He didn't just go and say, okay, we're going to run this, we're going to run the 24B. He let them talk, which showed that he trusted them, and they had some input. And Phil carried that over into his coaching career, too.
Strong stuff going on there. We need to take another time out. When we come back, we'll take a closer look at Phil Jackson's early years in Chicago. Stay right here with us. Welcome back to our Hall of Fame tribute to Phil Jackson. After winning a title in the CBA, Jackson left the league and began exploring other career paths. He was just about to apply to law school when he got a call from Jerry Krause of the Bulls. Phil became an assistant coach, which introduced him to the player who was captivating Chicago and the basketball world, but had yet to realize his potential.
From the first moment he stepped on an NBA court in 1984, Michael Jordan's brilliance was impossible to ignore.
No time for Mr. Jordan.
Possessing an abundance of talent and an iron will, he instantly made the Chicago Bulls a playoff team.
Jordan on the drive, right of the lane, 18-footer. Yeah! Yeah! Yeah!
But as the years went by, frustration would set in.
And the Pistons make Jordan pay.
As he would be unable to bring Chicago to a title, and 3 coaches would lose their jobs along the way.
It's over. The Pistons return to the NBA Finals.
In July of 1989, Chicago would hire their 4th coach, Phil Jackson.
I remember when Phil was named a coach, the first thing was, it's like, what? Phil Jackson? That's that guy with the coat hanger shoulders and the wild flailing old Nick. And he's not a head coach.
As a former hippie and role player on the Unselfish Nick championship teams of the early 70s, Jackson would attempt to bring his team-first philosophy to Michael's Bulls.
Michael was like a shark in the water. He was always looking to score. And he was obviously driven from the belief in his own abilities. And, you know, from that standpoint, Michael made players feel like they weren't participating in the game.
Jackson would install the triangle offense in an attempt to foster teamwork.
I knew that I needed a system where he could play out of that would employ all the players. And if everybody participated in it, then that would empower them.
For years, Jordan alone carried the Bulls on his back with heroic performances.
Oh, good! The Bulls win it! They win it!
In the past, Michael was unwilling to trust his unproven teammates, but was now being asked to share that responsibility.
He was basically asking, the best player in the game to take a backseat and maybe put aside some things that he could accomplish personally for the good of the team.
This was like heresy to Michael. He's looking around and he says, I got 4 guys around me. They might not be able to score by themselves in an empty gym. I mean, come on. I remember Michael saying, I'll give it 3 games. If it's not working after then, I'm doing what I want to do.
Jordan, and he goes to work, and it's blocked. Here come the Bullets with the lead. Larry Robinson takes it to the hook, and that's the ball game.
Phil had drawn the blueprint for success, but Michael ripped it up. In Jackson's first year, Jordan took more shots and scored more points than the season before, and once again the Bulls tasted playoff defeat.
Well, in all honesty, I didn't really fall in line with the triangle.
He wanted to do a lot of things that he'd done before. He barked at guys to get out of his way. He'd get in people's faces and tell them they weren't doing the job, or he could come in at halftime and explode in a locker room, and I'd come in and find the locker room chilly, frozen.
Phil clearly had a problem, but while other coaches would have tried to confront Michael head-on, Jackson took the path less traveled.
Phil would have it in our tapes. We edit them and we'd put little things in that would talk about teamwork. He would have the Grateful Dead, Full Metal Jacket.
One year he gave me Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance.
Phil would be burning sage. Imagine an NBA coach coming through and waving burning sage in your locker room. Imagine him turning out the lights in the film room and saying, okay, everybody, let's work on our breathing.
While Jackson's methods might have been unconventional, his devotion to the team concept never wavered.
What I tried to convey to Michael is the ball is a spotlight. And if you're always on the ball, in the ball, handling the ball, your teammates become inept and impotent. Michael's response was, well, what if the ball ends up in Horace Grant or Bill Cartwright's hands as the clock's running down? And I said, well, they'll figure out a way how to get the ball to you.
On the court, Phil would let Michael and the Bulls find their own way.
It could be 7 baskets in a row. He wasn't going to call the timeout. I'd say, Phil, 4 in a row. Phil, 5. Phil, 6. I'd say, my God, Phil, we're down 14 now. And he'd say, I understand it, but he said, I'm not taking the timeout. He wanted to teach an object lesson at that moment to that team that he was not going to bail them out.
Phil always looked at himself as a teacher, and this was a way that he thought his pupils could grow and develop.
During Phil's second season, Michael would begin to play the way Jackson had envisioned, and the results were startling.
Double team on Jordan, 3 seconds left.
As Chicago posted its best record ever.
It took me a year, at least a year, to buy into that, and but it seemed to work wonders for us.
With Jordan playing both spectacularly and unselfishly, the Bulls would take a 3-1 lead over the Lakers in the NBA Finals. But as Jordan reached for the elusive title in Game 5, he still had one final test to pass.
Michael wanted to win that game so badly that in the course of the game he got caught up in, I better do this. I've carried this team a lot in the last 3-4 years. I better do this. This is the final act.
The Bulls are down like 10 points, and Phil's yelling in the huddle to Michael, who's open? Michael, who is open? And he says, well, Paxson. That's exactly right.
We set up a middle penetration where Michael actually would pull the defense in, and then he hit Paxson. I think he had 7 out of 8 shots in the fourth quarter. And it set up a perfect ending.
And the Chicago Bulls have won their first ever NBA championship.
I was probably most happy for Michael in the sense that I knew him a long time, and you knew that he was going to be judged on winning, and it became Michael trusting others that eventually got us to win. And the reason he began to trust was Phil's influence. He'd gone from, you know, being a great player to being a great team player and a great champion.
And that championship began the Bulls' dynasty. Charlie, why was Phil so successful in his relationship with Michael Jordan early on?
A couple of reasons. Number one, he wasn't overwhelmed by Michael's celebrity. He had played in New York when the Knicks were the toast of the NBA world. When Bill Bradley joined the team, that was an amazing situation. The media really covered that. And also, Phil was the only individual in the Bulls organization who was as competitive as Michael was.
Wow.
The difference was that Phil knew how to harness that competitive nature and win, and Michael really didn't. So they respected each other's competitive nature, and Michael kind of had to learn what to do with it, how to turn this into championships.
What did Tex Winter mean to Phil's development as a coach?
Well, Phil was searching for an offense. He tried to flex for a while in the CBA, which requires everybody to pass, pick, and cut. But it didn't work out because the first options were kind of limited. But Tex refined the triangle offense, and Phil even took it further than that. And basically, it's a read offense where you take what the defense gives you, but it institutionalizes really what you're supposed to do. I pass, pick away, cut away, move, and replace.
Good stuff there, Charlie. All right, folks, we have to take another short break, but when we come back, we'll take a look at Jackson and the Bulls' continued success in the 90s, plus Phil's move to the City of Angels.
Coaching is that you've got to have a sense of confidence about what you're doing.
It's hard to stay in the moment in this kind of situation. You get giddy. You know, you got a lot of energy, you got a lot of thoughts about it. You stay really focused.
Tighten up. That's the term. Just tighten up a little bit. Not, all right? Not too hard. Loosen up. Listen, if I call a 10 defense, match up and play 10 full court defense. Don't leave Michael alone here. It's not time yet. Right.
Welcome back. During his time in Chicago, Phil Jackson earned his reputation as a skilled motivator. Even after he had won the trust of Michael Jordan, he still had to find ways to keep his team focused. After winning titles in 1991 and 92, Jackson prepared the Bulls for the tough NBA Finals against the Phoenix Suns.
They're not supposed to win, they're not expected to win, and the pressure's all on you. And that gives you that anticipation that you got to play not to lose. Don't do it that way. Go out there and seize it.
Having captured a championship, Michael and Phil grew comfortable with each other.
Phil would put him on the floor in the scrimmages. He'd give him, honestly, the last 4 players on the team. But Michael would look at him and say, Phil, I know what you're doing, but we're still going to win. Now, sometimes after the first series was over and he had lost it, Phil would say, that's it. He'd say, no, Phil, we're going again.
As I start to fall in line with his beliefs about, what teamwork was all about, the dedication of teamwork and compromising your game, that's when things started to fall in line in terms of our relationship.
Michael, 11 seconds. Across the timeline he comes, goes to Pippen. Pippen breaks inside. Well, Pippen got the shot. They go to Grant. To Paxson. Paxson going for the win. Here's Paxson for 3. Paxson. Yeah! The Chicago Bulls has won 3 straight NBA championships.
That's what bringing me into this world.
But after winning a 3rd straight title, Michael would be dealt a severe blow when his father was found murdered that summer. He would then approach Phil about leaving the game.
I could see that he was wounded, and it was just a short 4 or 5 weeks since his father had been murdered.
It was a very emotional situation for the both of us, and I put it to him. Tell me what challenges are out there for me to keep me focused as a basketball player.
It made him stop and think about life for a second, and it gave him an opportunity to step back and say, hold it, there's more to life than this.
Phil knew that Michael needed time.